Hey, so quick word. I want to give this word to someone who may be in a wilderness season right now. I want to say to you, do not despise your wilderness season. Again, do not despise your wilderness season. The wilderness season is not a punishment. The wilderness season for you is literally a prepping before the promise. I want to say it again. The wilderness season is not a punishment. The wilderness season is a prepping before the promise. You are in the wilderness because you cannot skip the wilderness and go straight into the promise. The Lord heard your cry in Egypt. The Lord heard your cry in those hard places, in those relationships that you asked to come out of, in the hometown that you asked to come out of, in the toxic places that you asked to come out of. And the Lord has delivered you from those places. And when he delivered you from those places, when he pulled you up and out of those places, he had to place you into the wilderness because there are some things that he needs to do to you in the wilderness. There are some things that he needs to pull up out of you in the wilderness. There is some stretching that needs to be done. There is some pruning that needs to be done. There is some shedding that needs to be done. There is some preparation that needs to be done in order for you to cross over into the promise. So I want to encourage you, do not despise the wilderness. Do not think that the Lord is punishing you because he has you in a wilderness season. The Lord has you in the wilderness season because he's doing a new thing and he wants you to see it. He literally says in scripture, I am doing a new thing. Can't you perceive it? He literally wants you to forget the things which are behind you, meaning the Egypt. Forget the Egypt. He's delivered you from Egypt, but your mindset is still in Egypt. Your mind is still in Egypt. So he has to take you through the wilderness season so that your mind can come out of Egypt. He cannot take you into the wilderness into the promised land with the Egypt mindset. He cannot take you into the promised land trying to hold on to things and people and places from Egypt. So he has to take you through the wilderness because in the wilderness, those things will shed off. Yes, it doesn't feel good. Yes, it doesn't look good, but he is doing something. He is up to something great. And if you endure the wilderness until the end, if you endure and you don't complain and you don't moan and you don't groan and you don't mumble, God will deliver you. He will bring you out of the wilderness and take you into the promise. But you cannot skip the wilderness before going to the promise. So I want you to know that God is not punishing you, that he is prepping you. I'm going to say that again for those of you who feel like you are being punished. You feel like you've been dropped in the wilderness. You feel like you've been dropped in uncharted territory. You feel like you've been dropped in an unfamiliar place in a foreign land. I need you to understand that you are not alone, that anywhere that God takes you, he is already there. His spirit is already there. The provision is already there. The Lord delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt and he put them into the wilderness, but every single thing that they already needed, every single thing that they needed was there in the wilderness. It was all about their mindset. And because they did not allow the Egypt mindset to fall off of them right then and there, that's why they stayed in the wilderness a little bit longer. So I pray that you allow whatever it is that God is trying to uproot off of you and out of you, whatever it is he's trying to pull up out of you, whatever it is that he's trying to do, whatever it is he's trying to produce, I pray that you allow him to do it in this wilderness, because once you allow him to do what it is that he wants to do, then he will promote you, he will elevate you, and then you will walk into the promised land. And then you will walk into the promised land. So many of us are so desperate to get to the promise that we don't even know that the wilderness has more coverage than the promise. The wilderness has more protection than the promise. The wilderness is where God's presence is. The wilderness is where God's presence is. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be anywhere that God's presence isn't. So if God's presence is in the wilderness, you tell him, Lord, I will stay here until you tell me to move. Moses told him, I don't want the promise without your presence. So we have to be that same way. Lord, I don't want the promise without your presence. So if the Lord has you in the wilderness for a reason, for a season, there is a reason that he has you there. His promise is there. His presence is there. His provision is there. And I pray that you change the way that you are viewing the wilderness and understand that it is not a punishment. It is a prep before the promise.